Good morning, students. Today we are going to start a new chapter, that is standard costing and variance analysis. Okay, as we all know that standard costing is cost accounting itself is a measure for cost control and cost reduction. Now, standard costing is one of the efficient tool for cost control. Fine. So let us first understand what is standard costing. In standard costing, we have predetermined or preset standards. We compare the actual performance with the standards, and if there is any deviation from the actual and the standard, then we find out the deviation, which is known as variances, and find out corrective measures to remove the differences. Fine. So you can see in the first slide, I have given introduction of what is standard costing. Standard costing is a technique which uses standards for cost and revenue for the purpose of control through variance analysis. Now, what do you mean by standards for cost and revenue? For example, in standard costing, we give some targets. For example, the cost of material per unit should be 10. The consumption of material should be, say, 2 units per unit of output. Okay, so these are the standards. So these are the standards for cost. Similarly, there can be standards for revenue. For example, the selling price of a product should be, say, 20 rupees per unit, or the number of units sold should be 10,000 for a particular duration or particular month. So we can have standards for cost as well as for revenue. Here, standards are performance expectations. Standard costing aims at eliminating waste and increasing efficiency in operation through setting up of standards for production cost and production performance. In short, standard costing is control device and not a separate method of product costing. It can be used with any method of product costing, job costing, or process costing. Standard requires historical cost data. Now, what is historical cost data? In order to compare something, compare the actual performance, we need some preset standards. These are known as historical data. Fine. So we need historical data for comparative analysis, and it helps us to understand whether we have reached the goals. Okay, going to the next slide. In this slide, I have given the meaning of what is standard costing. Fine. So standard cost, what are standard cost basically? So if somebody asks you what are standard cost, so what are standard cost is the predetermined cost. For example, when you are giving an exam, you have a set pass percentage, say 40% or 50% is your pass percentage. So that is your standard which is predetermined. So you can either be above the standard or below the standard. Fine. Similarly, for every cost component or for every revenue, you will have some predetermined standard. That's the reason I have mentioned here standard cost are always predetermined cost. The different standards regarding there are different standards for all the elements of cost. Now, what are elements of cost? You may be having standards for material. The three important elements of cost are material, labor, and overheads. So you may be having standards for material or standards for labor, and similarly standards for overheads. Right? So we have to consider what are the factors which determine your standard. Okay, so just go through this slide. Okay, now there are different types of standard like ideal standard, expected standard. Okay, now what is ideal standard? For example, what is the ideal standard? That a student should get, say, 90% of the marks. Okay, that is ideal. But is it possible for every student to get 90% mark? No. So what is ideal standard? Which is a very unrealistic standard which may not be attainable. Okay, so suppose if we set at that 90% is the standard, that becomes the ideal standard. Okay, coming to what is expected standard, majority of students are scoring 70% marks. So what is your expected standard? Expected standard is 70%. Okay, so we have what is known as ideal standard and expected standard. Fine, I hope it is clear. Just go through it and we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah. Now coming to the objective. So whenever we are studying anything, we should first know what is the objective or what is the purpose of that particular concept or that particular tool. Fine. So let us just quickly go through the objectives. Okay. So what is the first objective of standard costing? To institute a control mechanism on all the elements of cost that affect production and sales. Elements of cost, as I mentioned, raw material, labor and overheads are the main elements of cost. So what is the basic purpose of instituting standard costing? To have cost control. The second objective, to measure different operational efficiencies and check wastage. Okay, now for example, take the example of labor. Suppose I have given standard for my labor that in 1 hour he has to produce say 50 units. Okay, so this is the standard which has been given to the labor, but the labor is producing only say 30 units. So there is a variation of 20 units. Now this variation is known as a adverse. Adverse means what? It is not a favorable variance, because what was the expected output? Expected output or the standard output was 50, but he was able to produce only 30 units. So why he is able to produce only 30 units? Because maybe he is not very efficient. He is not performing as per standard. So we are able to check the inefficiencies. So that is known as operational inefficiencies. Okay. Similarly, in case of material, suppose if I give you that for producing 1 unit of output, we need say 2 units of input. Instead of 2 units, the labor is using say 3 units. That means he is wasting, the usage of material is more. So what is going to happen is he is using more of material. So there is more wastage of the material. So what are we doing? So what is the second objective? We can tap whether the operations are efficiently performed and check the wastages. Okay. The third one is improve the delegation of authority and generate a sense of responsibility among the employees. Okay. Now, if the employees are given certain targets, they will always strive to meet the targets. Okay. So, in a way, what the management is doing or what the top authorities are doing, they are giving their responsibility to the juniors. So, they are being self-motivated. They will always try to meet the targets and meet the whatever are the goals given to them. So that creates a sense of responsibility. If you don't give the target, they will have a very casual approach. They will feel that I don't have any target, let me work the way I want to work, and they will not be motivated. Going to the fourth objective, to develop cost consciousness in the employees. Okay. For example, suppose we are buying, the standard for material is given as, if you want to buy 1 unit of input, you can spend say 100 rupees. So the cost per unit of input should be 100 rupees. But the purchase manager or the person who is in charge of purchasing, he is procuring it at 120. So he knows that I am going higher than the standard. So I am purchasing costly material. I am not able to procure the material at the required price. So in this case, he is deviating from the standard. So he will have some consciousness. So next time when he is buying, it will come to his knowledge कि अरे बाबा मैंने बहुत महंगा खरीदा था. So let me see, let me negotiate with the suppliers and try to get or procure the material at 100 rupees. So he will make some efforts. Suppose if he does not have any targets, he will not make any efforts to reduce the price. Is that clear? Coming to the next objective, to presume production cost and sales. Okay, presume production cost means what? You will have some set targets or set benchmarks. So you will always try to achieve that. Then the sixth is to avail the benefits of management by exception. Now, what do you mean by management by exception? Suppose management by exception is, suppose if something is going wrong, then the management will interfere and try to rectify that or try to give some corrective measures. If everything is flowing smoothly, then there will be no management interference. Now, what is the benefit of this? Lot of time of the management is saved because they don't have to operate the routine activities or the activities which are going on smoothly. They need not have to focus on these objectives. So they will focus only on those activities or those areas where there is the intervention of the management is required, or say maybe they have to take some corrective actions. So this saves a lot of time of management. This is known as management by exception. So once we see that our employees or those concerned, they are meeting the targets, then there will be no need of management interference. So this is known as, it facilitates management by exception. Okay. So coming to the next one,